Anglo Saxon Hammer Axe in question, and right now I'm going to give you the reasons that I believe that this genuinely could be the second Anglo Saxon Hammer Axe ever found. Now you might have noticed that I said the second Anglo Saxon Hammer Axe ever found, and that is because the first Anglo Saxon Hammer Axe ever found came out of one of the burials of Sutton Hoo. You might not have heard of the fact that there have been at least 3, I think possibly more, burials that were unearthed there, not just the one with the boat. And in one of them, a very long-handled hammer axe came out, and it was the important point is that it had an iron handle. And it is the only other example of an iron-handled hammer axe that I could find reference to. Now I need to kind of explain why I think this is an Anglo-Saxon hammer axe, and it is because about 2 years ago I got access to a farm on a very important location which I didn't know at the time, and I started metal detecting there, and I ended up finding Anglo-Saxon items, of which I'll put a few up now. Within a year this came up. A friend of mine dug it up, and unsure of what it was and thinking it was kind of not much of anything at all, he was going to throw it away. So I said I'd take it and have a look into it, and that's when I then got home, started researching iron-handled hammer axes. With that phrase, the only iron-handled hammer axe that came up was the one that came out of the Sutton Hoo burial. Now that's interesting because it subsequently turned out that the fields in which I was metal detecting were an Anglo-Saxon pagan burial ground, and I found plenty of other things you've seen now. And this thing came up. Now we've got really, I understand that there is only one other. The difference is the handle length. The shape of the axe itself is a little bit more hooked on the one that came out of Sutton Hoo. And there are other details which I'll go into a little bit later that leads me to think that perhaps this isn't an Anglo-Saxon hammer axe, but the very location in which it was found, the fact it has an iron handle, it kind of says to me that it could be quite important. I do not know. I really do not know. It looks kind of modern in a funny way, but the welds look very crude. And this is the thing that makes me believe that perhaps this is something more than just a tool. The Sutton Hoo hammer axe has been considered to have been used for the culling of cattle. So they think that the hammer end was the bit that you'd hit the animal on the top of the head with, just to cull animals. And that's a moderate theory, but really I'm a builder, and one thing I do know is that having an iron handle on the head of an axe is not a very clever thing to do. Mainly because if it breaks, you can never fix it again. So if this head snapped off, you can't just put a new handle on it. It would have to be welded on, rather than you just fitting a wooden handle. A wooden handle also makes the handle itself lighter, which means the head travels faster, which means it's got more power. So if you were going to build something for a tool, it makes far more sense to build it with a wooden handle, not with a metal handle. That just doesn't make any sense at all, let alone iron. It's just going to snap, and once that's snapped, the whole thing is pointless. The fact that they found the other one in the Sutton Hoo burial, and now I've found this, whether this is or not, I don't know, but it took me to a place of just trying to work out what that was for. And I started having to consider possibilities, and the possibility that I came up with was that this perhaps is a symbol of kingship for Anglo-Saxons of the time. Why do I think that? Well, because we have one of their gods, which I'm sure you all know, is Thor. And Thor, son of Odin, he was a very important, very worshipped god back in the day, and people used to wear amulets, Thor amulets, hammerhead amulets, for luck. And in fact, I've got one on now. And this is perhaps a symbol of that. And my wonder is that if this wasn't at some point gilded in gold, and it was never used as a tool at all. It was just something that you had on you that showed everybody that you were the king. Eventually we ended up with like the kings having a ball and scepter, like a, you know, I can't exactly remember what, I think it's a scepter, and I don't even know what the ball stands for, but they ended up having these symbols of kingship, queenship, that they all hold. And I wonder if that partly gets its origins from perhaps something like this, where you know, either a sword or a symbol of some sort tells you that you are the king. Now, what is telling me that perhaps this isn't an Anglo Saxon hammer axe is that there are striations in the top. But they are on, so this is what people are going to think, is that perhaps this was some sort of file, metal file, that was used, and someone in more recent times has turned this into this, and then has just for some reason dumped it in an Anglo-Saxon burial ground, and that seems pretty unlikely to me. And when I start looking at these striations, they're not uniform, they're not even, they're cross-hatched in many different places. The axe itself is blunt, completely blunt. It doesn't look like it was ever sharp unless the tip snapped off. And the only way we're ever going to know, I mean, let's go back, the reason that I think these striations perhaps are here, which again are not uniform, so it's not been made out of a milled machine in modern times. Perhaps it was made in a long time ago, who knows, and it's still an old item, but it might well have been. The other thing is, although they would have got hammered out as they've gone down a bit further, although the striations do carry all the way to the tip. So what I think they were for is perhaps to hold gilding on. I don't know if that's even a process, but gold gilding or silver gilding is where you just take gold leaf, you hammer it out into a sheet, and then that gets kind of, it's very thin. You can take it down to like a micron or something. It's insane how thin they can get the gold, and then that gets glued on basically. But perhaps, I don't know if this is even a process, it might be worth someone having a look into it. I've tried and haven't been able to find anything, but maybe these were used as like a key to hold on gold. That's just a thought, I have no idea. And the only possible way we're ever going to really know for sure is if it gets handed in and the iron itself gets carbon dated. Now, I haven't touched this with any products or wax or oil or anything, so I've left it just as it is, and I'm hopeful that, you know, somewhere along the line we can get the British Museum to take this. I'm going to be handing it in to the Finds Liaison Officer fairly soon. As soon as they get back to me, really, I can then go in and give them a whole load of the Anglo-Saxon stuff, the details of where it came from. Then I'm going to try and convince them to do a carbon dating test on it, because if it happens to come from sort of the 700 to 1000 era, then we can pretty much absolutely say this is an Anglo-Saxon hammer axe, and it would be just an incredible find. Absolutely one of the most important finds in a very long time. That, or it's just nothing at all. But again, I come back to the chances of finding something that only has one other in the same area, in as much as they're both Anglo-Saxon burial grounds. That seems highly unlikely. It's just, it could be a cruel twist of fate that somebody has done this, but I don't think so. I genuinely think there's something to this, but I can be proven wrong, happily. If we do carbon testing and it turns out that the iron is more modern, then it's just some random coincidence. But it's an interesting possibility. And with all the links to Beowulf and to the kings being around the Hamsey area, which I know a lot of you will know what I've been talking about, what I am talking about here, it makes it even more interesting. So with any luck, I will let you know. Whatever the answer is, I will let you know. So just as a possibility that this comes back from them, and it is or it isn't, I'll let you know. But please, if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell, and then you'll get the video to find out. And I'm hopeful to get that within the next few months. Depends how quick they are really with it, and whether or not I get to go into the Finds Liaison Officer. She's supposed to get back to me this month, but I've not heard yet. So let's see.